Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this new episode of Voice of Youth. Today itself, we are talking about the 2021 census. I'm just giving a brief update of why people were talking about it, at least why the Sikh people were talking about it, and why I saw so many posts on Facebook. So I have one guest joining in, and let's get to the conversation now.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We'd like to introduce Japneet Kaur into the call itself as we talk about the 2021 census and everything going around that. Hopefully you've all done it by now. If not, that'll be a fine coming in. But, we're talking about this after the census has occurred, after we've both census and filled out the details. There's one thing in particular we'd like to talk about. But before that, I'll just introduce Japneet. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Yeah, you've got into a lockdown. Yes, last night you said, not today, yeah?
Yeah. We got the
that?
news at 11 that we've got a new COVID case, and by 12 everyone was ready. Lockdown, panic buying had started.
That, as expected, in Melbourne here at the time of recording this, we were now past the first week that we were meant to come out, and now we're into the second week. So hopefully it all goes as planned. Hopefully your lockdown doesn't get extended. But nonetheless, we're talking about the census itself, and the main thing we're talking about is the fact that Sikh wasn't listed as one of the religions that you could automatically choose from. You had to put other and then type in your religion when noting down what religion you're from. And before I ask your opinion on that, I'm just going to quickly read the first few sentences of the 2021 census overview so we all know what the census is for. The census is a snapshot of who we are and tells the story of how we are changing. Census data is used to inform important decisions about transport, schools, healthcare, infrastructure, and business. It also helps plan local services for individuals, families, and communities. So, Sikhism, the Sikh community, I'm sure this census would be a great help to us, but it wasn't listed there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the reason it's not listed is kind of made explicit by the census details, which claim that it will only list those religions that were with the highest populations in the previous census. And we're currently, according to 2016, at 0.4%. And until we get up to 1.9% or over, we won't be on that list, according to what the rules currently are for the census.
1.9%, is that a lot to you? I didn't know that was a rule that you had to be. I mean, 1.9% doesn't sound like a lot, but I also...
1.9% isn't the limit, sorry. I'll clarify that. It just has to be... 1.9 I'm getting from the least populated religion on that list right now.
Yeah. Okay.
The census can easily choose to just extend that list, make it smaller, make it more specific. That's all within the hands of the ABS and whoever is the government of the time.
Yeah.
But currently, that's kind of the limit I see, just because that being what is actually the Hindu population according to the census.
Okay, so using what data is available, you've constructed that as the rough estimate of what we'd have to meet. So, but you said we're at 0.4. I'm very surprised by this. I saw a lot of posts on Facebook and everything going into the census telling people to make sure you list Sikh as your religion, or make sure you put Punjabi as your language, which is interesting because Punjabi is a pre-listed language there. So a lot of families out there speak Punjabi but aren't of the Sikh religion and everything. And most of the time you would associate the two with one another, but in this sense they're separate, which is always interesting to see. So then what would you say should be done, or do you think it's really important that the number increases, or is it just a fine thing that if it's at 0.4, it's at 0.4?
No, I definitely believe that we need to at least make sure that we ourselves are making sure we put down Sikhism for religion and also Sikh ancestry, I would say. Just because, as you said, it goes into a lot of issues like funding for locations for gurudwaras, or details within hospitals even, how they react with people, homes for elderlies, and the facilities available for Sikh members who might be in certain homes and also schools and how schools deal with exemptions. I'll kind of explain why I think it's important with like an example, right? Most states within Australia now have an exemption for the Kirtan for Amritdhari Sikhs. And whenever any kind of leader of the Sikh faith goes into that kind of a meeting with a policymaker, it's really helpful for them to have a clear data saying, okay, these are how many people we have, these are how many people are affected, these are the amount of people who are going to care about this when it comes to voting time. And to be able to say that gives you more value in allowing for those kind of religious exemptions, or just having Sikh issues actually become Australian issues.
Yeah, that makes total sense, because I obviously, when you brought up the Kirtan thing, I thought of a recent issue that happened a few months back.
Yeah.
And then there's always all these other things, but I think about hospitals and schools. You think about for when they can have not necessarily religious ceremonies, but if someone is mourning or something, you can bring in a gyani, or you can have like a little kirtan program, or during a day of remembrance for the Sikh people, whatever it's a martyrdom or Gurganti or something, you can have that not exemption from school, but a little understanding in a school itself.
Absolutely.
Doing all this, so then when you think about, do you know how much 0.4 like the literal number is, or is that it?
I'm not certain about what that number is. I do know it's an increase from 2016. So not a huge increase, probably like 0.1, but it's been increasing since the year, every census. We've definitely seen that increase happening.
So I guess, so do you believe, or is this something you've heard of, that most people don't put Sikhism as their religion because they don't want to, or they just feel like it's better to just click other and leave it blank, or they associate with a different religion? What is it that you've heard or believe?
Mm-hmm. My understanding with like what I've heard around people who have both been campaigning to get people to write it in and otherwise is that people used to either click other and leave it blank, or in certain circles people were unclear about the question and they would tick no religion, just because they didn't see their option in the list. Both of those don't actually like help us as a Sikh community get the numbers, but also the religion question on the census is optional. So if people don't want to, they don't have to answer it at all. Okay,
so it's not necessarily about the fact that it might be true that there is only this smaller percentage compared to other religions in Australia itself of the Sikh people, but it may be that Sikh people out there, whether or not it might be because they just recently migrated here, or maybe because they do the whole census thing, or they just don't want to, maybe personally for whatever reason, want to list it on this, because it is an optional question, like you just said. It's not necessarily because we are of a small minority in this situation itself. And that's interesting to think about, because when I go to the Gurdwara, and it has been a long time since I've gone to a Gurdwara, I'll be honest. I think that's the same for a lot of people. But you see, it's very much so packed and full of everyone. And, however much each person is, a practicing Sikh or not a practicing Sikh, that's a different topic in question. But they would list themselves as Sikh in this census itself. So
I definitely just to say here that I agree with you. Like the main thing I'd probably say is having people tick other and then leaving it blank, right? And a lot of people, as you might have mentioned just then, is that they're not comfortable as much with the English language at times and don't feel comfortable putting that in. It's actually a bit different to the issue of language, which you also brought up earlier, because when people didn't see Punjabi, they'd often let it as instead. It was like, oh, close enough. But that doesn't really happen with religion, because we do have a very distinct and strong identity in that regard, which is a very good thing in my opinion.
Yeah. What would you do do you think all these posts that we've seen leading up to the census have been effective in trying to get more people to put Sikhism down as the religion, to do all this kind of stuff, or just so we know what we can try to do for the next census?
I'd like to think, at this point we don't have the data, right? It'll be much clearer once we actually see how the numbers have appeared in the 2021 census. But just in terms of awareness, I do think within the community, when you're walking around, people are talking about it more. people are hearing about it more, and that can only be a good thing. And I think this time around, it was very helpful for people to actually have a screenshot of the census available to them, right? To be able to see exactly how the question would appear in front of them, then to be able to kind of copy that over when they fill their own census in.
Yeah. So like you said, once we get the data, it'll be easy to talk about this. So then, is there anything else you'd like to bring up regarding the census? And then I think we should, when the data comes out, I'll see if we can get more people on as well, and also talk about the data and see what it says, especially with the change since the last census itself. But do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share about the census itself?
Not majorly. Again, I just kind of want to reiterate the fact that for a lot of people, this census is just this idea of I've got to do it or I'll get fined. But it actually does change the way that people formulate policies, and also the way that businesses treat customers, right? And the kind of facilities they make available for people. And it becomes really important when you want to actually have something said to the wider public from a Sikh perspective.
Perfect. A nice way to kind of wrap that up, the importance of the census. We're talking about it after it's happened, but nonetheless, we're talking about it. But no,
it'll be back in 4 years.
It'll be back in 4 years. You are preparing for the future. That's the main thing of Voice of Youth. But no, thank you for joining in on this episode. It's a nice short one today because we just wanted to talk about this. Talk about, obviously, since it's happened recently, and then kind of, I've seen a lot of people post about it. So it's an important thing to talk about. And once we get the data, we can talk about it again and compare it and contrast it with the previous one itself. So with that all said and done, I hope you out there have enjoyed this quick, short little discussion on the census itself. Hopefully you can, you've done the census and it's all you did. You wrote Sikhism down if that is your religion and everything of the sorts. And we'll wait to see the data. Until next time, thank you for joining us. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.